Making of a photo shoot. Charlie, do we have an announcement to make, buddy? Charlie, is this the only way we can get you to do stuff by watching TV?
What?
Oh yeah, what does that say? Biggie.
No,
Small. Charlie.
Butterfly.
Okay.
The cheese.
Another beautiful day in San Francisco. It's one of my favorite views of the city from the top of that hill. It's just gorgeous. We are on our way to drop Charlie off. It's 8 in the morning. Posted a video, I think around like 3, 4 in the morning. Don't exactly remember. Everything's starting to blend together. The plan, I believe, for today is going to be going back home and resting for a bit. There's just really no way I can go play now after like 3 hours of sleep, 3.5 hours of sleep, and just be functional. I think even yesterday I was just making a ton of mistakes, being overly aggressive. I've read some comments already. People are saying, oh, this hand's a spew, that hand's a spew. There's a lot of what I do that is a spew, and classifying the ones that get called as spews, but then, you know, kind of rewarding the other plays that get folds as like hero plays, it's a bit silly. You know, you have to kind of take it all into account. Ranges, sure, there are definitely spots where I get overly aggressive with some ridiculous hands, but at the end of the day, if I end up getting a fold, then it's great. And if I don't get a fold, then, you know, it's advertising dollars. Charlie, say hi. Hi.
Hi.
So anyway, short point is we have to look at hand ranges. Am I a bit of a speed monkey? Sure. Anyway, dropping Charlie off, then we're gonna nap, then we'll get back to the grind. All right, catch you guys later. Say bye, Charlie.
Bye.
Not entirely sure if that idea got fully fleshed out because Charlie was kind of yelling in the background. He was excited to get to school. But anyway, my point was, it's easy to look at a hand and be like, oh yeah, you're spewing in the spot when you get called. And then another spot be like, oh yeah, like what a hero, you're making these great plays, getting people to fold. And, you know, not thinking of them all as spews. You know, we have to look at them as just like a range. Am I playing this hand in this spot in this manner often? No. Was I possibly playing it at the time because I was stuck a little bit and knew that I had to leave shortly? Yeah, probably. I mean, am I mixing it up at these times? Yeah, I would agree with that statement. But at the end of the day, giving action players action is never a bad idea. There's just nothing really that can happen poorly here. You know, I got to show down the 4 deuce against this player, and you know, maybe that won't stick out in his mind, and maybe it will. But like I said, I think he generally thinks I'm rather tight. So maybe now he's gonna, you know, even give me more action going forward or make lighter calls on the river. It's all just advertising dollars. You know, there is marketing in poker. Anyway, like I said, going home, gonna take a nap. Very tired. It's 8 in the morning. I'll probably head into the casino around 10 or 11 to get in like a 5-hour session. Catch you guys on the way there.
5 hours later.
Woo! 12:30, on our way to the casino. A bit later than expected and preferred, but needed to catch up on sleep. Got the vlog last night up, I think around 3 a.m. and then had to wake up around 7:30 to get Charlie to school. And I was just way too beat. There was no way I was gonna go play early in the morning. Got in a nice little nap, and now we're off. Hopefully less interesting spots than yesterday, because these 30-minute videos are taking way too long to edit. And, you know, people say, you know, make them shorter. The thing is I just discuss the hands that I think are interesting, and whatever length that happens to be is kind of where we end up. All right, let's get to it.
5 hours later.
How's it going, YouTube? On our drive back to pick up Charlie, just finished up a session of mostly 3-5 no limit with about 45 minutes of play in 5-10 PLO. The game had started, as usual, kind of around like 4:40. I got to be able to play for a little bit before having to leave. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play any hands in the PLO. I basically just paid the blinds, lost $60 playing the PLO. So let's get to the session of the 3-5. I get moved to the main game. Not much has really happened as of yet. I haven't had any hands of note up until this point. I do notice there's this one player who just lost a fairly sizable pot, and now he jams under the gun for 42. You You see this a lot where, you know, basically a guy essentially goes broke, loses like 700, 800, 900 or whatever it is, has like 40 bucks left. In the very next hand, they're just all in because they don't care, right? They're trying to get it all in. They've essentially like come to their fate. Sometimes it's good hands, oftentimes it isn't. So he jams for 42. I have ace 10 off in the cutoff, and I decide I want to re-isolate. I don't want to make it too big in case somebody does wake up to a hand and now ends up 4-betting me. I make it 105. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger, like 110, 120. Now, the small blind cold calls 105. It's a guy I've played with a few times. I've seen him kind of lose his mind sometimes. Sometimes he plays like okay. So obviously I kind of hate this spot that he's, you know, cold calling here. We go 3-way to a flop with the one guy all in for 42. And the flop comes like 8-3 deuce. Now the small blind just open jams into me for 300, which is all he has left. Obviously I fold. Turns a 9, river's a brick. And he shows 8-6 of clubs, the small blind does, for cold calling 105 with 8-6 of clubs. The guy under the gun has ace 9 and turns a 9, so he triples up. Yeah, pretty interesting. I couldn't really believe he's cold calling here for the 105. I guess he himself is ready to go as well. The very next hand, there's a limp. I have king 10 offsuit. I raise to 25 to isolate the limp, as well as the big blind who has just jammed the ace 9. I think he's very likely to be calling here a lot or just looking to get it in. The player who had just called the 105 with 8-6 of clubs calls on the button for 25. Sure enough, the guy who had just jammed in the last hand jams in his big blind for 125. The limper folds. I want to isolate him. I think he's doing it again. Very wide. Doesn't need ace high. And even if he has ace high, I'm willing to gamble with him. I don't really care. So I make it 325. Also, with the guy calling behind me, given that he just called with 8-6 of clubs for 105, I don't think he has to have anything. So I want to isolate. I make it 325. He's playing like 410, 420, something like that. He tanks for a while. He's like, all right, let's gamble. He rips it in for his 420. I call. Flop comes 10-6 deuce. Turns a queen. Obviously don't love it. River is a deuce pairing the board. He announces, the guy who had jammed for like the 420 or whatever it was, announces that he can't win. Music to my ears. Love the sound of that. He tables jack 9 of diamonds. So he turned open-ender. Thankfully he missed that. The other player jammed all in dark, so he starts turning one card over at a time, and he ends up having like 7-5 offsuit. So we scooped that one. Pretty nice, given that I had just lost 105 to the hand before. So I think after this hand, I'm up maybe like 200, something like that, because I was stuck a little bit before that, especially after I make it the 105 and fold. In this next hand, we have an open to 25 from a player who I had played with previously. I think last week, there was a hand where he had opened under the gun. I called with 10-8. The flop came like 9-9-7 or 9-7-7. He bet, I called. Turn was an 8. He check called a bet, and on the river he check folded to a huge bomb of mine. I was turning my 8 into a bluff. Turns out he wanted to call me with ace king high. So obviously I want to be playing hands with this guy. If he's telling me he wants to be calling like huge overbets with ace high, you know, I'm looking to mix it up with this player. He opens to 25. I'm in the cutoff with ace 10 offsuit. I could be 3-betting, but given his large opening, especially for this game, I don't necessarily want to be getting out of line. It looks like he's going to have a strong range here. I've yet to really see him doing anything too crazy. So I just call with the ace 10 offsuit, and we go heads up to a flop, which comes 8-7-3, all diamonds. I have the ace of diamonds. He bets 25. Obviously, I could just raise here and try to play a big pot in position against him. Hopefully getting full as ace highs, and even if he does end up having hands like over pairs, it's going to put him into a tough spot on various runouts. I decided to just call and hope to get there against, you know, possibly like he'll have kings or queens with a diamond, because he did end up looking back at his whole cards to see if he had a diamond. I call. The turn is the 7 pairing the board. He checks, and when he checks here, I want to be taking the betting lead. I think that, again, he could have ace highs or just any random 2 cards, God knows. So I bet 45, and now he check calls 45 fairly quickly. The river's an 8, double pairing the board. Now it's 8-8, 7-7-3. He checks. At this point, he's already shown that he wants to call me with ace high. He, you know, had this big tank where he wanted to call with ace high previously. So I don't think he's folding ace high for chops. And if he's not folding ace high, he's very unlikely to be folding over pairs. I could do something crazy, exploitative, like just like 2xing the pot. But You know, I've done this to him previously as a bluff. I don't really want to be trying to do that. I think we're going to be chopping here a lot. I end up checking back and lose to his 8-4 offsuit. He has 8-4, no diamonds. Congratulations, you know, holding there against my 2 overs and the nut flush draw. This is really interesting for me because obviously going forward it's going to create an interesting dynamic against this specific player, because I see that he's opening the 25 with 8-4 offsuit, whereas previously I thought that his range was significantly tighter than that. So you know, I'm looking forward to playing with him in the future and playing a lot of hands with him. Now we wake up to pocket kings in the small blind. Middle position opens to 20. The button calls 20. Obviously this is a spot I'm going to be 3-betting out of the small blind. The question really is sizing. I've mentioned before I like to 3x plus everything behind it. Kind of similar to in pot limit Omaha. You know, if you're raising pot, you'd be like 3 times the last bet plus everything behind it. In this case, I'm out of position, so I like making it a little more. So that would be 80 plus the blinds, about 85. They're all fairly deep. The guy who opened has 800. The button has about 1,000. I have both of them covered. So I don't want to be making a small raise and giving them odds to flop a set on me if that is what they have. I'm going to be out of position in the hand, so it's just going to be harder to play. Also, if I were to be squeezing in this spot, I'd be squeezing to a large amount, right? I'm like not going to make it 80 out of the small blind as a steal. So I want to balance the times that I'm going to be squeezing with real hands as well as squeezing, you know, for bluffs. Like if I'm squeezing some like ace-x suited or something like that. So I make it 120 out of the small blind. I think sizing is fine. Any smaller than that, maybe around like 105, 110, I think is about good. I don't think you want to go too much smaller than that because now they're getting odds to call you in position to try to flop a set. The big blind ends up jamming for $60. The opener folds. Now the button kind of looks at me. He's like, all right, I'm not going to do this to you. You're lucky. He shows me pocket threes. And I'm just like, oh yeah, give him a 3 as a joke, you know, now that he's folded. The big blind shows pocket aces, who's all in for 60. So obviously I'm very lucky that it's the big blind that has $60 that is all aces, that has the aces, whereas everybody at the table is way deeper. I think the minimum stack after her is like 300, and there's obviously people that are playing like 5, 6, 7, 800. So I got really lucky that I'm running kings and aces against the one player here who's very short. Flop comes 7-7-3. So again, I'm very lucky that the button folded pocket threes. Because obviously in this spot, like I'm just gonna lose a really big pot with pocket kings on a 7-7-3 board in in a 3-bet pot. So if he does decide to call, I might just double him up for 800. I don't see how I'm really folding. The turn was a jack, so maybe some percentage of the time I think he could have jacks. He's a good player, and so I don't think he's gonna be trying to like do like some crazy move on me. So I could probably hero fold on later streets if the action gets kind of hot and heavy. But I think all in all, got really lucky to run kings and aces against a short stack and have the one player who's playing like 1,000 fold the pocket threes when he's gonna flop a set. I'm feeling pretty good about it. There's, you know, it's not very often that you feel really good about losing, but I feel really good about this running kings and aces. And this is the final hand of note for my session. This is actually one of the last few hands that I played before I headed over to PLO, which started up. Middle position, young kid who had been up quite a bit amount of money before this hand, opens to 20. Another player calls 20. I'm in the big blind with pocket deuces. Obviously, easy call. I'm going to try to flop a set here multi-way. 3-betting out of position. I don't really see any purpose in doing that. So I call 15 more, and we go 3 ways to a flop, which comes 7-7-9. Goes check, check, check. Once this happens, I think I'm going to have the best hand here a lot. I expect the opener to be betting this flop with his pairs, and similarly the last player to act, I also expect him to be doing that a lot. Sometimes I'm going to run into something like pocket 5s or 6s, but otherwise I feel like I'm going to have the best hand. The turn is an 8, which isn't a great card, but still I think a fairly good card for me in this spot where their opening range, raising range, I think is going to be a lot of Broadway cards. Obviously I do lose to Jack 10, but I think Jack 10 sometimes bets this flop. I lead for 30. The opener calls 30, and now the next player calls 30 as well. I think a lot of times here they're going to have a 10. I expect Jack 10 to be raising. Obviously, they could be slow playing some really big hand like full houses, but I'm not too concerned with that at this point. The river, unfortunately, is an 8, double pairing the board, and now I end up having to play the board. My deuces are no good. I think, again, a lot of times here it's going to be ace-high type hands that are missing straight draws, maybe ace-10, maybe ace-jack, king-jack, gut shots, things of that nature. The pot's about 140, I think it is 145. I decide to bluff, and obviously when I'm going to be bluffing here, I want to be bluffing large. I'd be doing the same thing with my full houses to balance my bluffs. So I bet 110. He goes into the tank for a bit. Kind of looks like he wants to call. Then looks like he's about to fold. Ends up calling. He has ace-jack high. The other player folds. So obviously I lose to him there. Not in love with the bluff because I think I am calling here, getting called here fairly often by the ace high. But obviously if I check, I lose. Don't like losing. So I decided, to bluff. I hadn't been doing too much. Basically, the whole entire session, I never got out of line. I wasn't really doing anything crazy at all. And so, I don't mind my bet here, given that I think that one of them is just going to have ace high, and some percentage of time I'm going to get him to fold. Unfortunately, didn't get it through this time. I end up losing 140 in 3-5 no limit. Kind of not much going for me. As I mentioned, I ran the kings and aces. Could have been significantly worse, and ended up not really making any hands otherwise. Unfortunately for me, I had to leave to go pick up Charlie. What was a really, really juicy game. I mentioned the pot previously where I lost to Jack 10 5-3. That player had arrived. Obviously, the game essentially builds around him. He's probably going to be playing for a couple of hours, if not longer. So the game is going to be really good for a few hours. I might end up returning to play PLO tonight. Haven't really decided. We'll see what ends up happening. Otherwise, that's all she wrote. Another loss. Yesterday lost like a medium amount. Today another medium amount. But last week was great. So this is going to happen, the variance of the swings. I'm feeling pretty good. At least no real huge losses. Yesterday was able to come back from the 1100 loss to essentially break even. Today I count any loss of a couple of hundred or win of a couple of hundred, kind of like breaking even. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you later. Charlie, do you want to go get French fries?
Yeah.
Yeah, French fries are yummy. All right, time to go get some dinner. Going, Old MacDonald. Cone. Old MacDonald had a farm.
Yeah.
And on this farm he had a cow?
No.
What do the cows say? A chicken? What do the chickens say?
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
Cock-a-doodle-doo. And a moo-moo here and a moo-moo there.